I'm going to call our meeting to order. It's 5:40. Apologize for those who are watching on TV. The camera and whatever isn't working tonight, but hopefully you can still hear the audio version. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with tonight's council meeting. And if everybody would stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have some sad news that you'd like to share with everybody tonight before we get started with our city council meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Rowe.
Today we learned about the passing of Skip Stevens. Skip served for 45 years as an employee to the city of Ottumwa, starting his career in 1961. During his last 11 years working with the city, he worked as our public works superintendent. In 2001, Skip was named the City of Ottumwa Outstanding Employee of the Year. After retiring from the City of Ottumwa, Skip was elected to the Ottumwa City Council in 2013 and served our community for 7.5 years until his resignation in 2021 due to health complications. He was notably a champion of Ottumwa's park system and a bulldog for our public works infrastructure. You hear people say that they love their community. Skip not only said it, he lived it. He gave all of his working years to this city. He created his family and his legacy in this community. After he retired, he continued to support Ottumwa through his leadership on the Ottumwa City Council. Nobody that knew Skip would ever have an ounce of doubt that Skip didn't want what was best for the city that he called home. He was a shining example of what a service to your community looks like. Skip was and will remain a pillar of this community. I'll say personally, after meeting Skip many years ago, I never once questioned his interest in the betterment of Ottumwa. Even when people disagreed with Skip, everyone still held a very high level of respect for him because they knew that even though they may not see eye to eye on that particular issue, he would still stand and fight for them when they needed him. He was a mentor for me as I stepped into this position, and I feel that I'm a better person for having the privilege of knowing him and learning from him. On behalf of the staff, Ottumwa City Council, and the citizens of Ottumwa, we want to first express our utmost gratitude for his lifelong dedication to our city, and more importantly, extend our deepest condolences to Alberta and the Stevens family. Your loss is definitely a loss for the city of Ottumwa. If we could, I'd like to honor Skip Stevens tonight with a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate those comments. And I knew Skip too, and he really was a wonderful man. And I totally agree with everything you said. He really was very committed to the best interest of the city of Ottumwa. And I had the distinct honor of finishing out his 4 months on the council back in 2021 before Sandra got elected and started in November. So I had known Skip for several years too, so he's going to be really missed, and appreciate Mark's comments and taking a few minutes to honor him this evening. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Okay, we'll go ahead and Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope? Here. Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Galloway? Councilmember McIntyre?
Here.
Councilmember Hull?
Here.
Mayor Johnson?
Here. The next item on tonight's agenda is to approve our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
The next item is to approve our regular council meeting agenda for tonight. So do we have a motion for that as well?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Our next item is City Administrator's report to council and citizens. I'll turn it over to Phil Rath, our City Administrator.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Tonight, we've got our quarterly report from Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress, and we have Mark Rowe to provide that for us this evening. Waiting for a PowerPoint to come up, I believe.
Is that not working either?
We good?
We
We're
are
good with
just
that?
waiting on the PowerPoint to load.
There we go.
There we go. Awesome. Okay, so I'll try to be quick tonight. As everybody's aware, one of the goals of Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress, we had 4 pillars that we were working on throughout the course of the last year, and one of those was organizational health. And we're since the last time that we presented, which would have been mid-October, we celebrated 6 new member investments into the organization. So 6 new businesses joined GoPIP during that particular time. We have also increased 1 new member investment. So the point to that is we are starting the process of turning the organization around and building a solid fundamental business relationship with the community. Through that, looking year over year, we're maintaining a 95% member retention rate for the organization. Now, a lot of that is due to cleaning up old accounts, things like that. So as far as membership goes, I think that we're headed in the appropriate direction for GoPIP moving forward. And I think that speaks volumes to the commitment of the staff to ensure that we are serving not only the businesses that we represent, but the community as a whole in the proper fashion. To that point, our GoPIP ambassadors, we have re-engaged the community in a little bit of a new fashion, and we're making sure that we're getting out there. As a matter of fact, there's been a few people sitting up here that have been very engaged. I'd like to thank Mayor Johnson and Councilperson Hull for their participation in a lot of these ambassador events that we've had over the past several months. We have, again, increased engagement. We have, from a volunteer standpoint, we've brought on 2 new ambassadors to celebrate new business openings, new things that are being partaken by the business community. We've reactivated 1 former ambassador that had sat dark for quite some time. And since mid-October to last week, we have performed 18 ribbon cuttings in the city of Ottumwa. So all great news as from a standpoint of business relations here in Ottumwa. We've got a lot of new businesses opening up. So anybody that's out and about that's listening to this, there are plenty of new businesses in the community. Go out and support local business and visit some of these new organizations. From a board perspective, we have seen some change at Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress over the last few months due to new position alignment from the organizations that are represented within the Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress investor categories. We have introduced 2 new board members. The first one is David Will. He's the plant manager of John Deere Ottumwa Works. He's been a great asset to us to this point. And starting in the month of March, we celebrate bringing Dr. Jill Buddy from Indian Hills Community College on board. Just for reference for Dr. Buddy, she actually, prior to coming onto this role in Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress, she was actually the president of the Ottumwa Economic Development Corporation prior to her term expiring. So she does come on board with a breadth of knowledge of what the organization stands for and what we're supposed to be doing. So we're very excited about that. And with that, We have had some change in the executive leadership. We have Mike Sproul with South Ottumwa Savings Bank that moves into our president's role. Kelly Jenners, who is the CEO of Ottumwa Regional Legacy Foundation, she will assume the vice president's role. AJ Givok with Remax Pride will assume our treasurer's position, and Zena Boyd with JBS will be the new secretary for the organization. From a brand awareness perspective, I had mentioned at the last coming to council that we had reorganized the GoPip website, and to that, we started doing data tracking on the website at the exact same time. So we have added is our alignment with Mission 500 in Ottumwa, the Mission 500 for housing projects. We have created the GoPip website as the landing page for all of the resources related to Mission 500 for residential development. That's completed. And since the remapping, I'm really happy to say that we've seen a 55% increase in traffic to the available buildings and sites. And why that's important is because a lot of people are coming to that specific section of the economic development website to see what available buildings and what available sites we have in Wapello County for starting businesses. So that's a very good sign, I believe, for not necessarily GoPip, but for the city of Ottumwa and Wapello County, that people are paying attention and people are actively looking for available sites here in Ottumwa. And then we've also seen a 4% overall unique visitor increase to the website. From a social media perspective, which kind of is where the rubber hits the road as far as getting the word out for any business news or any event news that we have. When I reported last time, we had seen a 20% organic growth to all of our social media platforms since March of 22. And to this point, I'm happy to say we've seen a 35% organic growth rate. So we are seeing that. And part of the reason that we are seeing that is because we've been tracking and actively making sure that we're doing what we said that we were going to do for the businesses, for the community, for our partners. And we've had 94 engagements specific to Wapello County businesses and economic development. And then with our new TikTok account with Be the Ambassador and a couple of other videos that we've made, we've seen over 7,000 unique views to that particular platform. The Talk Ottumwa podcast has seen over 750 unique downloads to this point, and we've seen over 1,500 unique streams. So we are able to effectively get out the information about the city of Ottumwa, the businesses in Ottumwa, and we'll be able to use this data going forward to make sure that we are consistently benchmarking against ourselves to not only grow the organization, but to grow the community as well. We've had a couple of community events since the last time we talked. First, we had the GoPip annual banquet, which was held at Bridgeview Center on October 20th. We had 148 attendees, which is an increase over the prior year attendance for the event. Holiday Nights and Lights, which I'm sure anybody that drove out past the park between November 17th and December 30th saw that display. We had over 3,400 participants go through the gates through that, which is pretty comparable, almost as good as what we had during the two COVID years, which is good. And I think part of the reason that we had that is because we added over 30 displays this year. So there was a lot of new lights to see. It's just too bad that the Iowa winter did not give us snow to make it prettier. So other than that, though, overall it was a very successful event. We had several people come from other counties, other states to enjoy the event. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we can grow that for the next year. And then what I'm very personally proud and excited to talk about something that we've been talking about at each time we come to one of these council meetings and give these presentations. The day is finally upon us. Tomorrow, we will be launching the inaugural Lean In Women in Leadership Conference at Bridgeview Center, starting at 8:15 in the morning. And we had anticipated an attendance of 200 participants, and it looks like that's exactly what we're going to hit. So we're bringing in speakers from around the state and around the nation to talk tomorrow, and I believe that it's going to be an extremely well-received event, and I'm excited to see how the day turns out. I think from a leadership perspective, this is going to be a very good event for the future leaders and honestly the current leaders that are in the Southern Iowa region. From a perspective of advocacy, on January 28th, we held an Eggs and Issues roundtable at the Hotel Ottumwa, and the focus of the event was rural infrastructure. We had Larry Seals from the city of Ottumwa, Brian Morgan, who represented the Wapello County Supervisors, Scott Arnold from ITC Midwest, and Kelly Jenners from the Ottumwa Regional Legacy Foundation. The topics of conversation was not only what you typically hear, roads, sewers, water, housing, but we also talked about one of the biggest issues that we are facing in the next couple of years, which is broadband, and how we position ourselves in the community to make sure that we have broadband access and we're competitive from an economic development perspective moving forward. The next Eggs and Issues will be on workforce, and that will be held at April 26th, again at the Hotel Ottumwa. So anybody who's interested, please reach out and we can get you on the list. Moving away a little bit away from the investor membership side to the economic development side, we have had the fortune of being able to reinvest $80,000 for economic development into the community, into the moving into this calendar year. And where we're going to be focusing that is the Church Street Business District and wayfinding signage, which is something that the city as a whole has been talking about for years, and obviously workforce development and regional data analytics and marketing for the county. Specific to Church Street District, we do have a meeting coming up with the property owners on March 20th. And what we will be discussing is how we can make an immediate impact into that district and hopefully align that with the opening of the hotel later this year. We did finish the architectural design for the Downtown Child Care Center, and that was presented on February 14th, which was the official launch of the capital campaign for the center. So we're excited about that. It's a beautiful design, designed by Faith Built Architecture here in Ottumwa. Helgerson Flats, which we've talked about at several points in the past, we have completed 2 RFIs for future use for that. And we are meeting this week actually to talk about reevaluation of the marketing efforts to see how we can get that property used for industrial use looking down the road. And then from a land acquisition assistance point of view, GoPIP has been involved in 2 retail, 1 service, 1 multi-state operator, and 1 restaurant in the past 3 months. And then I'd be remiss not to talk about retail strategies from a global perspective. We have had, and again, just to remind everybody, we're going to look at this from 2 different perspectives. 2 different perspectives, one more of a global and one more centralized towards downtown. From the more global perspective, we have had some conversations that with retail strategies. They have created the market guide for the city. They have made presentations to the city of Ottumwa twice, once in the city of Chicago at an ICSC convention, once in Dallas at an ICSC convention. I can't be happier with the engagement that they have had with both Zach Simonson's department and us. They've had consistent engagement with Quincy Place Mall and Albany's Cormier, and work has commenced on some market engagement with some retailers. So that's from a global perspective, that's kind of what we're seeing to this point, which being 6 or 7 months in, I think that this is pretty good. Downtown perspective, we had retail strategies in Ottumwa on January 17th for a stakeholder session to talk about the current state of the downtown Ottumwa, and several members of the group that was there took those folks on not only a tour of downtown, but the areas such as Church Street that were immediately adjacent to the downtown district. And then just today, actually, Zach, myself, and Fred Zeziger sat down with retail strategies, and they gave us the market analysis results that they had promised us during the January 17th presentation. So things are moving in a solid direction, and we're excited to see what the future is going to hold with that. So that's what I have, and if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to entertain those.
Are you feeling pretty confident that it looks like there's some good leads for possible retail development coming in the future? I know a lot of times they don't want to say a lot till they get final plans, but are you pretty confident that Retail Strategies is going to produce some results for us?
At this point, I would say that I'm very confident that they are doing everything that they said that they were going to do in the offset. They've had very good conversations, and I would say that where Ottumwa was prior to contracting with Retail Strategies, where there wasn't a lot of, I wouldn't say lack of interest, but even lack of knowledge about the city of Ottumwa, bringing them on board has changed that conversation. And now there are people who they know where Ottumwa is, and they are interested in at least pursuing the possibilities of Ottumwa.
Well, and Retail Strategies has a good track record of marketing on the nationwide level too, which should really help us too in the future. We haven't had a lot of that in the past.
Correct. And just as a reminder to everybody that's listening at home, when the initial presentation was made for Retail Strategies, it was said during the conversation, this is a 3-year contract that they made with the city of Ottumwa. And they said, there are going to be a few months in the offset up to a year or so where we're building the base for getting out there, getting the word out, getting in front of those national retailers and positioning ourselves to actually bring business here. So in my mind, based on what Retail Strategies promised in the offset, I think that they're keeping to their word in what they said that they would deliver. And I'm comfortable in where we sit today from what they said that they would be able to do.
Do you know if the mall owner of Quincy Malls had any success in attracting any new tenants on his own?
I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you, what I have seen. We have seen Harbor Freight come in the last year and a half or so, and that's really the only thing that I've seen come in there. So, I know there's been incremental success on their part, but as far as anything beyond that, I know that, again, there have been conversations with Quincy Place Mall, both from a city perspective and a Retail Strategies perspective.
Thank you, Mark. Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask Mark? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask Councilman Rowe any questions about his GoPIP presentation? I just want to say that I think you've done a really outstanding job since you've taken over, and you're really trying to move things forward. And I think we're going to see a lot more results in the future than what we've seen in the past. So great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Phil, do you have anything else for your city administrator's report?
No, not this evening.
Okay, the next item would be when I ask if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak on any of tonight's agenda items that's in our agenda. We don't have any of those little papers up here where anybody has filled them out, but is there anybody that does want to speak on any of the agenda items tonight? Okay, we have no public hearings tonight and we have no ordinances, so we'll go ahead and Chris will continue.
Bid report to reject bids received on the City Hall improvements project. Recommendation, reject bids received on City Hall improvements project.
Do we have a recommendation? Motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Larry, I believe you're going to cover this.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The bids for the City Hall improvement projects were opened on January 24th, 2023 at 2 p.m. 2 bids were received. Both bids exceeded the opinion of probable cost. After reviewing bids, we discussed with each general contractor items that may have contributed to higher than expected bids. We then reviewed possible scope changes to reduce the project cost, including the possibility of value engineering. We were unable to identify any significant reductions. Our plan would be to revisit the design and look at alternate materials selection, evaluate options to separate projects and methods to reduce uncertainty in the bid items that led to higher than base price expected. The 2 bids are listed, and we just recommend rejecting both.
When we put out the bids for this project, did we send any out to any construction company that has like a lot of history with historical preservation type projects?
Yeah, there were actually quite a few companies that took bids out. We had, let me find it here in the notes. We had 11 general contractor and numerous subcontractors download the plans. We did have a pre-bid meeting where we just did have 2 general contractors and 5 subs show up for presentation material. One of the things we do when you're on these bid sites, any general contractor that's interested can download your plans and take a look and determine if they want to bid or not. We did actively go out and talk to other companies that do specialize in this type of work. Again, in this environment, they have so much work in their area. They've chose not to travel, and this is a company that we looked at some of their work and was very impressed. But again, that's what's kind of plaguing us right now. There's enough money in the economy that the larger contractors do not have to travel far.
Does anybody have any questions for Larry?
So what if we reject these bids, kind of what are we looking at after this?
We probably want to look back some of the stuff that Phil and I have spoke about. Later in the process, we had determined that it's possible to move First Hall staff down to the old museum building. That would open up the entire project and reduce the phasing requirement. We come up with that solution kind of late into the process, so we didn't see much benefit in the bid itself as far as reduction. The other thing we looked at, it's possible, one of the things that was recurring with all of the subs and the generals was there was a lot of unknown, and anytime a contractor has unknowns, which is typical in a project like this, they bid high to cover theirself if it's a lump sum type bid. On our street type projects, you see the pay apps that come through frequently. We have a multitude of bid items. I mean, there's times those contracts have 100 separate bid items. So if they miss something, they have a unit price. If it goes over, they're paid for that. In a building like this where everything was basically still the majority of it covered either in wall coverings or ceilings, they didn't have that opportunity. One of the things they point out, they wouldn't, when they were bidding, for instance, the plaster restoration, they really didn't know what percent. We took a stab and just kind of looked through ceilings and took off some panels and estimated percent of square footage. In order for them to cover theirself, they always bid high, and that's what we've seen. So we're looking at, are there options to perhaps come in and open that up completely prior to the bid and be able to quantify that to a higher degree and remove all those uncertainties that they pointed as why bids were high.
You good. And just more of a general, just a little clarification. You mentioned value engineering. It's going to be mentioned twice today. Can you explain what that is?
Well, there's a process where you can enter into the apparent low bidder, and then you identify things and you speak with them prior to the actual signing of the contract. For instance, one of the things when we looked at zone heating and cooling, we were looking at certain areas that might have 12 zones. Can we reduce it to 8? Therefore, you reduce a lot of your control systems needed to control that area. Those kind of things we'd want to look at and see the impact. They had suggestions on type of equipment, open it up to other types of equipment. Then again, when you do that, then you look at efficiency and have to balance what is your efficiency loss, what's your kind of overall scope that you want to accomplish.
Thanks, Larry.
Do you think if the bids have to be let out again another time, do you think there's any benefit to breaking them out separate instead of rolling everything into one big bid package?
That's what we're going to look at. Look at the HVAC, because we definitely need HVAC. I mean, we're running on a hope and a prayer on the current boiler. We really don't have any air exchange rates in this building. It's just a box.
Right.
We do want to do that, and that's got several health benefits too by adding makeup air. We're looking at maybe what we should do is look at first floor as a project, maybe break out some of the other items that could be done separate from that. Maybe break out the second and third floor items for later and concentrate on the main purpose of heating and air conditioning.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Consider Greater Ottumwa Park Tennis Complex Phase 1 bids. Recommendation, consider bid presented by PCC Sports and take potential action on awarding project.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Zach, I believe you're going to cover this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There wasn't much to the staff recommendation that was with the packet because we were still having some things up in the air by Thursday afternoon that we wanted to get resolved today. The, I guess, upfront items of the staff recommendation would be to reject the bid that we received for this project. Bids were received for the Greater Ottumwa Park Tennis Phase 1 project on February 15th, and one bid from PCC Sports was received. For the base bid, the sum that was bid was $2,483,771. They also provided bids for four alternate items as well. All of those items were above the opinion of cost that we received from the architect before the project. We did look at, with the apparent bidder and then also just our design team, we looked at some options for value engineering as well. We came up with 9 items that we're looking at that could reduce cost for the project. And our recommendation would be to reject these bids and to put some drawings together that reflect those 9 changes and go out and try to find a bit lower price.
Does council have any questions for Zach?
Was the bid on the 8 courts or?
The base bid would have been 8 courts. So yeah, that would have been 2.4, almost 2.5 million just on the 8 courts.
Okay.
And right now, there's only been 1.5 million committed, right, between the
Correct.
city and the school districts. I know the Friends of Ottumwa Park are starting their fundraising, but they're just early, I think, in doing that. So
Correct.
hopefully they'll be successful. Okay, if there's no other questions, Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Do we need to make a motion? Make a motion to reject the bids and what'd you say, Zach? Just reject the bids?
I think that's sufficient for this. Yeah.
Okay. Make a motion to reject the bids.
Second.
Okay, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Resolution number 33, 2023, approving amendment to professional services agreement between the City of Ottumwa and Beatstra and Kim Incorporated to add construction services for the CSO Blake's Branch Phase 8 Division 1 East of Iowa Avenue project. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 33, 2023.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Larry.
The city of Ottumwa entered into an agreement for professional services with Fincher and Kim June 1st, 2021. The amendment to the agreement for Blake's Branch Sewer Separation Phase 8, Division 1 will add the fees for general services during construction and resident review. Under the original agreement, item 18, compensation paragraph C and D referred to general services and resident review, and it was stated the fees were for those services shall be a separate agreement. The amendment to the professional service agreement is now clarifying those paragraphs, and the following are being added. The total fee for general services during construction shall not exceed $46,200. Total fee for resident review and construction staking shall not exceed $131,300 for resident review services, and it's based on a maximum of 1,300 hours. That's Stanley hourly fees. So the base design contract was $226,500. General service amendment is $46,200, and the resident review is $131,300 for a total contract of $404,000. This is actually the contract for East of Iowa services. What we had done was we run under the Phase 8 Division 1 contract until all of the resident review and general design services were exhausted under that contract. So what we did was with East Iowa paralleling Phase 1 Division 1 or Phase 8 Division 1, we were able to use the same inspector for both projects. He just simply went back and forth and tracked both projects instead of having a separate inspector on each. That's why we wanted to wait on this until that one was completed to see how much we actually had left from a time perspective.
Does the city have a typical template for an agreement, or is that always negotiated individually with each company?
They're pretty standard among the engineering firms. There's a little bit of tweaking to bring it toward your project, but they're fairly standard in the industry.
Any other questions, comments for Larry? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Resolution number 34, 2023, set March 21st, 2023 at 5:30 PM for a public hearing on the fiscal year 24 maximum property tax levy. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 34, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to cover this.
I am, and I'll start the discussion here with Edward. Bring up that one slide there. Perfect. Thank you. Maybe you can expand it a little bit if you can there. Iowa law requires City Council to hold a public hearing on proposed maximum levy of tax dollars ahead of adopting the budget for the following fiscal year. Resolutions that's being requested here would set the date and time for that hearing for next meeting on March 21st at 5:30. Due to the passage of Senate File 181 and the impacts upon taxable valuation, it's being proposed to revise the maximum levy to adjust for the anticipated impacts to the levy. And you can see here, so at the very top there, highlighted in, I don't know if that's pink or orange, last year, fiscal year, we had $679 million was our taxable value. Our levy for the year was $21.22, and that resulted in a little over $14.5 million of taxable revenue. Now that would be general fund, that's the other special funds, that's debt service, trust and agency, all of the funds makes up that $14.5 million. If we were to hold the same levy, and just based off of what would happen, that's the next box there, that same $21.22, that would result in a reduction of $394,000 prior to the passage of Senate File 181. After that, there'd be quite another reduction there. We'd actually be down $754,000 year over year. So basically, the impact of the passage of this Senate file was a reduction of $17 million of taxable value for the city. That's at the very bottom there. You can see that. We had a reduction year over year an assessed value of 18 million. So you can see why we'd lose some revenue there by leaving the levy the same. With this passage, another 17 million puts us at a major reduction in revenue there, a gap that we would have to fill. The green box, and it might look a little bluish up there on the screen, is what we had set the maximum levy at the prior meeting a couple meetings ago. That's still, we recognize that $18 million reduction that would increase, again, this is the maximum, the ceiling that we can have for the levy would be $21.68. That was an increase of 46 cents over the prior year. And would result in $14.5 million. So just a little bit less, $87,000 less than the prior year, but it would make us whole on trust and agency, debt service, and the insurance that we had increased there. That was prior to the passage of Senate File 181. With the additional reduction in taxable revenue, that's the lower box there. You can see that by keeping that same $21.68 levy that was adopted as our max levy, we lose another $370,000, or we'd be short $455,000. So now some of that is going to be nothing that we can control. Further reduction in the general fund levy, further reduction in the library, the Bridgeview Center, and emergency management levies. But the rest of that is a reduction to debt service, which we had projected at $3 million and change that we were looking to levy. We would have to make up that difference, most likely from the general fund. There would be a reduction to trust and agency and a reduction to our insurance fund. And so that gap has to be made up. What is being proposed is to have the public hearing and look at setting the levy at $22 and a penny. That would cover those balances for those other three funds. It still does leave us short about $238,000 year over year, but it is better than the $450,000. I don't know if anyone has any questions on any of that.
Does council have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a couple of comments to make, if that's okay.
Okay.
So this goes back to, I think, a meeting or two ago when this was initially brought up, and I guess I would like to reiterate it again, just for everybody who's paying property taxes in the city of Ottumwa, and in fact, actually Wapello County. This is one of those occasions where we can see the very real effect of decisions that are made at the state level that have a direct impact on the folks that are paying taxes inside a small municipality like Ottumwa and the county in which they reside. This is because of, as they published it, this is not my words, this was a mistake made at the state level. And unfortunately, cities and counties across the state of Iowa are being forced to pay the price for it. And no matter how you want to cut the verbiage of whether this money was ever ours, real money, or whether it was just something on paper, the fact of the matter is, what you're seeing on the, well, some of the people at home might not be seeing this tonight, unfortunately, but the number that we see in front of us is not something that's on paper. This is a very real change that's going to happen to our city budget. And I know that they'll be having a similar conversation at the Wapello County Supervisor's office here to come. They'll be losing money. The city of Ames, Iowa, in the last couple of weeks has talked to the tune of almost $1 million that they're going to have to adjust property taxes because of the state of Iowa coming back. And my problem with this, quite honestly, as a council person and as a citizen who's paying property taxes, is the state of Iowa had some options available to them. They could have said to the cities and the counties in the state of Iowa, we made a mistake. We're going to start over again. Because let's face it, the state of Iowa has been bragging for 2 or 3 years now. We have this huge surplus in the state of Iowa that didn't count this because they didn't know it existed, but they didn't. That was not something that was on their radar. They could have said, hey, we made a mistake, but you do have to give this money back. But since it's a mistake, we'll split the difference with you some way, shape, or form. But they didn't. They could have said, hey, we made a mistake. We're going to recoup that money. But since we know that most of the state of Iowa are rural communities and rural counties, we're going to give you a little bit of time to bring that money back to the state house. But they didn't. They got greedy, and I'm sorry that it comes across that way, but that's effectively what it is. They got greedy and said, we want it back. We want it back now. We're going to extend the budget timelines for the state of Iowa by 1 month only. And in a city like Ottumwa that has to figure out a $368,000 hole, or a city like Ames that has to cover almost $1 million hole, and say, we'll give you exactly 30 days to figure out what you're going to do, and we want our money back. And by the way, just as an added benefit, since we're at the state house, we're not here at the local level, you can rest your bottom dollar that the citizens of your community, the citizens of your county, they're going to come to you and say, why did you raise our property taxes? You guys are the thieves. You guys are the ones that are trying to hurt us. And meanwhile, the people that are at the state house get to say, oh, look, we have this huge budget surplus and we're doing such a great thing in the state of Iowa, when in fact, that money's coming right out of the pockets of the people of places like Ottumwa. So I just want to be very clear that if there is any adjustment, this is not a decision of the city of Ottumwa. It has been a mantra of this city council, this city staff for at least the last 2 years, that we're actively trying to lower property taxes. And the action we're looking at tonight to talk about raising the max levy has nothing to do with any action that the city of Ottumwa has taken. It has everything to do with the state of Iowa looking to recoup funds without working with the cities and counties in the state of Iowa.
So just to clarify, you are not voting on raising the ceiling or that maximum levy tonight. And again, that is not setting the levy for the next year. That would just be giving the ability to go up to that point in any one of those areas. And so it may be that debt service needs to be at that maximum amount and the other levies do not. So it's not locking it in by any means. You're only voting to either hold the public hearing or not. If the answer is no, we don't want to hold another public hearing on this, we would proceed with this 2168. If you do, then you would hold the public hearing and potentially make a decision at the next meeting to adjust the levy or not. Because of the passage of this bill, we have the permission to redo this. And as Councilman Rowe had mentioned, there's an extension on submitting the budget as well. So we're still within that timeline to do all of those things.
Because they gave us till the end of April, didn't they?
Correct.
And I appreciate Councilman Rowe's comments, because I think it is very important that the city, the people in the city of Ottumwa understand that this was not something initiated by the city council or the city of Ottumwa. It's in direct response to trying to deal with what the state's put on the cities and the counties. So thank you for providing that clarification. Any other questions for Phil? Okay, Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Resolution number 36, 2023, a resolution to register opposition to proposed legislative changes related to city finance. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 36, 2023.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to cover this.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. So the kind of going along, piggybacking off of the conversation we just had there, there's actually a couple of additional bills, finance bills that are in the Iowa legislature are currently being considered, specifically Senate File 356 and Senate Study Bill 1125. They, by estimation, would have negative impacts upon the ability for the city of Ottumwa to provide services to its residents and commercial enterprises. There is a resolution that was attached to the staff summary for consideration in opposition of those bills. And so for the benefit of council, for the benefit of the public at home, just briefly to describe these two pieces of legislation in their current format. Again, they're still being worked through the process. They could be changed, they could be amended, but they have an impact on revenue growth caps, extending rollbacks of certain properties, potential to repeal the local option sales and service tax for Iowa cities, and some other minor changes. But some of the biggest impacts that I would see that could negatively impact the city with Senate File 356, that is looking at combining general fund levies. And so right now, the maximum levy for the general fund is $8.10. And there are about a dozen other levies, either voted or non-voted, that municipalities use across the state that this bill would take and consolidate them all into one essential general fund levy. And for us, the impact would be support to Bridgeview Center, support to emergency fund, and support to did I say Bridgeview Center and library? So those three. So the intent in its current format, as I understand it, is with this combined general fund levy, it would take all of those and over time, either if communities were already at the $8.10 maximum of the combined, for us, we're at, I think like 8,775. And the impact would be to take that and maximize at the $8.10. So, for example, if our assessed valuation were to increase next year and we get the same amount of dollars and we're at this $8.77, we may be at $8.70 next year for the same amount of dollars, and then $8.60 and $8.40 until we got to the point where we're at $8.10. So you can see where 67.5 cents, roughly about $500,000 for us in today, we would not have that going forward. Then there'd be some ties to limit growth based off of valuation changes, 2.5%, 3%. There's some different formulas that are being rolled around with that. This has the impact not only of that revenue reduction, but where we have over the last couple of years, as Councilman Rowe had also mentioned, been able to take some of the trust and agency dollars and pull those back into the general fund or other funds by maximizing this and limiting the ability to use revenue in that way. It's going to roll that back. It'll be spilling back over into trust and agency, which is not part of this. In some cases, debt service, where we're looking at trying to make projects work, and now you're having to increase debt as a potential. So there's some just potential negative things there with that one bill. Senate Study Bill 1125 has a couple of pieces. One is looking at repealing the local option sales and service tax, and it would take away that from municipalities across the state and add a 1% state sales tax. So right now we're at 6% state sales tax, and the option for municipalities to have an additional 1% for a total of 7%. The state would say local municipalities cannot do that, but we'll charge a 7% state sales tax across the board. There is a plan to give some of that back to municipalities for whatever period of time. I want to say it's 20 years or so. It's looked at right now in the bill. There's no promise beyond that point in time. It also looks at those are things that the municipality has to vote on. Our current one, we have 90% going to streets and sewers, 10% going to general fund to offset property tax levy. The city gets about $4 million roughly in those revenues right now. That's $400,000 going to help offset the general fund, $3.6 million going to streets and sewer projects. If we don't have that amount, if we have some lesser amount, that is going to impact our ability to do projects that we're looking at, potentially looking at having to increase debt service there. One of the other pieces of this same legislative bill is looking at further reducing the rollbacks on commercial and industrial properties. Right now, we're at 90%. So 90 cents on the dollar we're getting from commercial or industrial properties. And it's looking at, over a 2-year period, rolling that down to 80%. So 85 in the first year and 80 in the next year. Just looking at the impact on our current valuations, that'd be about $300,000 each of those years. So at the end of 2 years, we'd have another $600,000 less revenue coming in to the city for those properties. That has real impact. We saw a few years ago when we were sitting here looking at a budget and we had to reduce our staffing by 6 positions in public safety. We had the ability to increase our levy last year. We brought 3 of those firefighters back. We're hoping to continue that trend. When we have revenue reductions, it is exactly opposite of what we're looking at doing. And with having limits on growth under this combined general fund levy, it starts to take away the incentive to grow. If you're getting less for what you're doing and you're not able to pay for some of the staffing that you need to do those things, it's a real hindrance. And so, I'll answer any questions I can on these, but the recommendation would be to send a message to the state and say that the city council is opposed to these pieces of legislation.
And this doesn't even take into account any of the state-funded mandates that they impose that you have no control over either.
Correct.
So, anybody have any questions for Phil? Okay, if not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
No.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Resolution number 37, 2023, adopting the policy statements governing the operation of the City of Ottumwa's West End Ignite Gateway Transformation Fund Grant Program. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 37, 2023.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Zach, I believe you're going to cover this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The first thing I want to say is that I think all throughout the entire document, I called the program West End Ignite instead of Ignited, which is probably just a Scrivener's error, but we'll have to maybe make a change too. I don't know, Chris, what's the best way to do that?
What should it be changed to?
Ignited.
Ignited.
Yeah, I had the name wrong. I'm sorry about that. Practically, though, this is a program. The Legacy Foundation is putting forward all of the funds for a program to provide some grants to help homeowners, in this case, in the West 2nd neighborhood from Kitterman Avenue to the city limits, do some improvements to their properties. The Legacy Foundation's made a goal of improving this gateway so that when folks first enter Ottumwa, they really get a great impression, and we can also put this neighborhood in a direction for success. The grant program is something that, like I said, the Legacy Foundation will provide all funding for, but the city would help with administration. So that's the reason we would adopt some policy statements, is to give a sort of policy basis for how we would help with our administration. The program will provide funds up to $5,000 per project for exterior home improvements, and property owners would only need to provide $250 in match. These programs would be open for applications on a rolling basis until all funds are exhausted. And the applications will open up here in the next couple of weeks to get this program started. The applications will be reviewed by myself and a representative of the Legacy Foundation. These policy statements leave room to also expand that review committee to include some more folks if that becomes the best way to do that. And then we will grant awards as the applications come in, and we'll continue to grant awards until the funds that Legacy's provided are exhausted.
Well, one of the things I want to say is I think it's a wonderful project that Legacy's been willing to fund. But my big concern is what kind of safeguards are going to be put in place to make sure that when these homeowners apply and they're approved for that $5,000, that it does get spent on the things it's supposed to be spent on.
Yeah, so we're going to be, and the policy statements aren't specific here yet. We're still looking at a couple of ways that we'll do this, but we'll either have reimbursement as the mechanism, so we won't pay out the project until it's finished. That guarantees the work gets done. Or there are some other tools that we can look at that we've done on other projects, whether it's a temporary mortgage that gets removed after the project's completed, whether it's some kind of provision that gives the city lien or rights back if the project isn't completed, if there's any funds provided up front. But the preference would be for all the projects to be done on the basis of reimbursement, and that's what we're going to try to do.
I've only, excuse me, I've only heard from a couple people on this, and I'm for it, and I think it's a great idea. I'm glad we have Legacy that's willing to fund this. But the concern from the two people that called me was the first thing out of their mouth, as soon as something gets re-sided, then their property taxes are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're in a house the way they are because they can't afford to pay much more on property taxes than what they have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I can see both sides to it, but what do I say to them if they say that to me? Because eventually that's what would happen.
Yeah, I think that part of that answer is that a rising tide kind of helps everybody. I think that property taxes can come down if everyone's valuations go up, and especially on a neighborhood basis, if everyone's able to kind of see some improvement, all values go up a little bit. That allows us to cut the levy back, right? That's part of the answer. I think a broader part too is that the program's voluntary. We aren't going to compel anybody to do anything, but there is sort of a minimum sort of standard, and that we want to continue to push people to meet that. And at some point, there's a lot of properties that I deal with on the other side of the job where the carrot doesn't always work, and we end up having to do the bigger issues with maintenance issues. And that's kind of what we're seeing in this district, is there's beginning to become a lot of issues where it's kind of gone beyond chipped paint to really serious delayed maintenance issues, and we want to help people with those issues and to make.
I agree with you. Thanks, Zach.
Anyone have any other questions or comments for Zach?
Zach, I'm really excited about this, and I'm glad that they've set the required match so low, because when you're talking about redoing a home, it's pretty expensive. So if they're going to give out $5,000 for the $250 initial investment, that's pretty great. Have they stated like how much annually they'll be able to put into it, how many applicants they'll be able to take annually?
I did not write that down. I want to think that it's somewhere in the area of $60,000
Per year.
I think they're going to do this the one time and then kind of see where they go from that. There are some other elements in this West End Ignited project. We're looking at some public art. We're looking at planting some trees in the right of way and on private property, and doing some sort of other beautification types of activities all throughout that corridor. There's also some talk about trying to put something together that'll help with commercial property in that district as well, some of which has some of the same types of delayed maintenance issues.
That's awesome. And so this goes from basically the West 2nd BP out. Is that my understanding?
Technically, it goes from Kitterman, so the overpass where the bridge goes over.
Oh, okay.
I don't think there's very much residential before that BP anyway. There might be a couple of houses on the north side, but it goes from Kitterman west.
All the way out there. Okay. And then, so this is for all exterior improvements or to the house itself, or does this cover like landscaping and stuff like that?
Yeah, it can be anything that's exterior, but we'd be trying to evaluate applications to find things that are going to have a big impact. So it probably won't just be landscaping, but if it includes landscaping as well as siding, painting, fence, whatever, kind of bigger projects
Rebuilding
as
your
well.
sidewalk.
Yeah, there's a lot of concrete that needs work in that area for sure.
And I assume in the application, the homeowner would have to specify exactly what they want this money for their property, what they want to do with it.
Right, not just specify what they want to do, but specify estimates of cost that are coming from whoever's going to do the work. So.
Any other questions? I think it's a great community project. Appreciate the Legacy Foundation's financial support of it. Okay, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is where I would normally ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on any items tonight that are not on our agenda this evening. Okay, hearing none. Does any of the council members have anything that they would like to communicate or report to the citizens of Ottumwa? I don't have any specific report tonight. No? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Pope,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned, and thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's city council meeting. Safe travels home.